in a minute, in an hour, then ignore that. So, The Passion of Joan of Arc.
Wait,
What'd y'all think?
I liked it. It was a cool movie. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Well, Cody, you're the reason you're here to talk about this movie. And so I'm curious, like, when did you first see this movie? Like, under
Hmm.
what circumstances? And like, what was your initial reaction to it?
Mm.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I want to shout out my friend Sean Boyle, who presented. He wanted me to watch this movie quite badly for some time, and I think the trade-off was I would watch this if he watched Tampopo, a great movie, which I believe he has still not watched, but neither here
Oh,
nor there.
brutal.
Thank God he turned me on to this though, because it is one of the most beautiful films ever seen from both a cinematography standpoint and the performance of the lead, Renee Jean Falconetti, which I believe this is her second and last film, is it not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This would I don't have words for it, and it's kind of a hot take calling it one of the greatest performances in cinema history, but it really is the amount she's able to do without much more than a close up. I could go on, but yeah, the first time I heard of it, that would have been about a year ago, and I saw it twice in one sitting. Believe both times with the Voices of Light accompaniment. If you guys are familiar, well, let me first ask: Have you which version did you guys see? Which score was it accompanied by?
I believe I watched the Voices of Light one. I think that's the one that's the default on the Criterion channel.
Same. Yeah.
Typically, yeah, yeah. Well, there were three very common ones floating around right now. In addition to Richard Einhorn's Voices of Light, you have one that has Will Gregory of Goldfrapp and Adrian Utley of Portishead. Did a pretty popular score for it. And there's also one by composer and pianist Mia Sita, I believe is how you pronounce her name. Neither of which I've seen. But the interesting takeaway from this is that none of these are actually a score for the movie, but rather music inspired by the film. I imagine whatever the original intended score was is long lost. From what I understand, this was more often than not would be played in a theater with a live orchestra. And with this movie having gone missing for as long as it did, I think they were kind of left to their devices to figure something else out. And that's a whole different fascinating story, just how Richard Einhorn put this together.
That's something we've definitely run into a bunch is silent movies that had some score originally that has been lost or is like has been replaced by other people's writing new ones. It's like there's a lot of movies that don't really. There are some that have a sort of like deliberate intentional score, and then there's so many that are just either whatever the musicians decide to play that day, or sort of have so many different scores that have been associated with it that there isn't really one definitive one.
Yeah, a lot were sent out with sheet music, but that like only kind of became common. I'd say in the late 1910s, something like that.
Yeah, I think even this movie, like the the French premiere had one score, but like the Danish premiere had a different
hmm
score.
Again, if they were being done with the live orchestra, and those releases were several months apart. I believe it was released in Denmark 21st of April 1928, and not in France until October. So there was a big old gap. I believe they had completed filming as early as 1927, but they faced a lot of censorship challenges. They had to kind of
Yeah,
push through to get it seen in the first place. They were very afraid of offending the Catholic Church when they were putting this thing out.
yeah. I read that there was like a kind of a movement in France against the movie, like before it was even made,
hmm
against the director Carl Theodor Dreyer because he was not French and not Catholic, and they were like, how can you make a film about Joan of Arc, our patron saint?
From what I've heard about the man, perhaps he was not necessarily very good at endearing them to his project. Is a nice way to put it. Sounds like kind of a prick, a very talented prick, mind you. But some of the quotes about how he would, with red in his face, passionately direct
Mm,
Renee Falconetti sounds like, oh, I see, you screamed at her and made her cry, and that's why she stopped doing movies. There seems to be a lot of stories of that vein, and I can't imagine a man like Joss Whedon 100 years ago still makes studios mad. It's just a fact. I do find it well, like, may I share an anecdote? I feel like I'm all over the place with this, but
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go
the
for
Yeah.
it.
set. He was very adamant that the set look and feel like the court and castle wherein these trials happened. So they built a full scale model, most of that set, despite having four walls and everything, can't be seen on camera because so much of it is composed in close up. But he felt it needed to be of such high detail simply for the actors to have something to feel like they were actually there. The ground of the set, much of it was stone. He'd have Falconetti kneeling on the stone and have her do tens of takes more than necessary to capture the scene, but have her his direction was you cannot let the audience know that your knees are in so much pain from being on this stone all day. So he wanted her to show a suppressed pain through her eyes to the audience. And he wanted to make sure that he'd find moments of her slipping as an actor wherein her pain shows in her face to kind of capture a moment. That's nuts.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of like the way that Spielberg,
Shots fired.
the way that Kubrick treated Shelley Duvall on The Shining.
Although I've heard that Shelley Duvall was sort of less put upon than the sort of initial like assumption was. Like Shelley Duvall showed up to that movie ready to like get fucked up a
Used.
bit.
I mean, you can call it what it is. It's abuse, but at a certain point, like there might be an agreed upon relationship between an actor and director wherein, yeah, give me the abuse so I can get where I need to be emotionally. That doesn't mean that I don't think that filmmaker won't sometimes cross a line when given that kind of room to play, so to
Oh yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Right. It's not something that, I mean, as we maybe see in The Shining and that we see here, there is some truth in some cases toward giving yourself this immersive experience of pain and horror to get it to actually show up on screen.
Method
Uh
Man.
yeah. The
I mean,
or,
as long as an actor is opting into that, I don't like
Hmm.
stories when it's like, oh no, they didn't want that to happen.
yeah.
Hmm.
Like if
Yeah.
actors are like, no, that's how I want to do this, then yeah, like go for it. But so yeah, I don't know how on board Falconetti was with all of the kneeling on stone floors and
No.
crying all day.
I do imagine her never doing a movie again is not ammo for doesn't feel like ammo that she was
Yeah,
on board.
yeah, it doesn't support that thesis
No,
much.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Chris, what did you think of this movie?
I liked it a good deal. I thought it's an amazing showcase for the acting. I
Hmm.
feel like it could have been a lot shorter.
See, okay, well, that was one of my questions. Is how many frames did you watch it at? Was it
I
20 or 24?
I watched the 24 frames and I still thought it was
So that
kind
is
of
the
long.
shorter one.
Yeah.
I was left almost wanting more, or maybe sufficiently filled watching this movie, I guess. And I was more worried about that because I'm not as obviously not as practiced in film from the era as you guys are.
This is atypical for that time, I
Oh
think,
yeah,
in a
Yeah,
lot
no,
of
it's
no, no. I got
very
ways.
that sense
atypical.
for sure. Which,
So this movie, part of what characterizes it, uh, and I guess I guess at some point very soon we probably should back up and just give a general idea of what happens in the movie. But this movie is composed out of a lot of really tight close-ups and
mhm,
just like showing somebody's face in really close on her face for 70% of the entire movie, basically. So structurally, with all of these close-ups, formally it is atypical, but then also I think a lot of movies at this time they didn't linger on things as much as this one does, which
Mm.
is in many ways to its strength because it's showing the depth of the acting. Uh Personally though, I kind of felt like it was hitting a lot of the same beats over and over again. And so I was like I would have liked to see kind of more of the story
mm.
rather than like focused in on this one thing for so long. And if it was going to focus in, it could have lost like 30 minutes maybe. But that's it seems very petty.
I see the point of view. I just couldn't disagree more. One of the things I love about it is that it felt he felt compelled to tell the story strictly set within the parameters of the trial. At this
Mhm.
point, particularly, I feel like maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps she's still quite legendary, but at the time, like the story of Joan of Arc was pretty well known, and she was always depicted as a warrior. and they like to highlight the themes that made her atypical as a woman, her age, her power, the fact that she saw herself as a conduit to God. But the movie wanted to show her in her, it's kind of like, reminds me a lot of The Last Temptation of Christ, wherein it wanted to show her moments of pain and fear that she had to overcome in order to show the courage that she had. It made her much more human, the human side of things, you know? Because
Hmm.
she's always so much just this almost this mythical figure, and she wasn't. She was a teenage girl who was, by all probability, a schizophrenic and possibly trans, and left in a position where she was asked to give up everything she believed in just to be left alive, and she had to overcome all of that to stick to her guns. Like, so much of this could have been prevented just by changing into a dress, and she opted not to do that. And there's no way that her survival instincts weren't gnawing at her the whole time. There's no way she wasn't feeling that immense pain. And one of the reasons I love that it, as you said, atypically decided to radically emphasize the faces of his actors. He saw her in theater, and if you think about it, the nuances of expression that cinema allows for you to tell a story in a much different kind of way. And I think a lot of people were still seemingly setting movies up like you'd see a stage play, and this was just look at the actors and let's see what they can convey. Um, None of the actors in this movie wore makeup, for example. He wouldn't allow them. He wanted any little bit of like facial expression to come through on the camera for them. And that's, I don't know, that stuck out to me as more evidence that he wasn't interested in doing much more than close-ups of actors. This seemed more like a project of how can we as a cameraman help an actor tell a story using just their face. There were very few dialogue cards. It felt very purposeful is all I'm saying. I guess the
Hmm.
choice to do it the way they did it.
Yeah, definitely on purpose. Definitely a considered choice. And I think that there are many ways that I think it works very, very well. I think you bring up there's a moment in the movie where they tell her you could just put all this behind you. You can just walk away if you just put on a dress, basically.
Hmm.
And she like contemplates it for a second because
Hmm.
she's like she has this moment of weakness of her convictions, and I think those are the moments where like the subtlety and the facial expressions really shine, I think, because it like that very human conflict that you're seeing on her face, and then her resolving herself to stick to her principles. I think all that works quite well there.
That stuff of like humanizing this historical figure was kind of my favorite aspect of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
because I during it I definitely thought about the last Joan of Arc movie we watched for this show, which was the Georges Méliès one from like 1905 or something.
I believe so, yeah.
Um, and that is like this like sprawling historical epic with battle scenes and like divine visions of like angels and shit.
Oh, it's also like 5 minutes long.
That too. But and this is like the furthest thing from that, where it's like trying to strip away all of the sort of like pomp and circumstance around this person and kind of focus on a single day. I mean, the movie took like about a month of time and compressed it down to a single day, but it's like this like very very focused thing.
I wasn't concerned with a war epic. This was a trial picture, and I was looking into it. It's one of the first, if not the first, real like trial movie. Like that's what this is
Yeah, it
about.
might be. I mean, I feel like it's always dangerous to say it's the first of anything, but
No,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
Going back to Méliès, there's the Dreyfus Affair, which has one of the multi-part film. It's like a 12-part movie or whatever, and one of them is entirely a trial. Uh,
There you
but
go.
also a quick thing on the other one. It is from 1900 and 10 minutes long.
Méliès did it.
But yeah, considering that it's made by Méliès, it's much more fantastical. It's really probably just about Joan of Arc so that he can make cool effects
He can
happen.
make cool castles and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was an aspect of it that I guess I really appreciated and I didn't know that much about this movie, and it was super famous, and I knew it had its sort of like fairly unconventional cinematography for the time. You know, the actual sort of like story that the movie is telling sort of got to me more than I kind of expected it would.
Well, so many of the themes they carry forward to today. Themes of female empowerment, trans themes, anti-gender conformity, themes of mental illness and censorship, and we can definitely relate to these. Not much has changed. Authoritarian rule,
Yeah,
the patriarchy.
the idea that it's not like Joan of Arc, wasn't she great? What a perfect person. And it's like,
No,
no,
no.
it's like she
She's
was a
very
person.
pious. She's very pious for one, and they're willing to show that. She's not educated.
The character
Can't
as
read.
president in the movie is very has a lot of qualities that are very admirable, but I liked how much it did really focus on those moments of internal conflict and of fear and of like she's not
Mhm.
sure of herself when when they ask her something, she doesn't immediately have an answer always, and she has to think about it. And it's like when she's presented with all these sort of ways that they're trying to kind of like coax her into confessing and trying to get her to go against her convictions, it's like she has to think about it. It's like, we're gonna torture you if you don't sign this thing, and she's like,
Mhm.
do I want to get tortured right now?
They never did torture. They only ever intimidate her with torture, which is, I think, is
Yeah.
how it's at least transcribed historically.
Mm.
I do find it interesting that the stuff that you found interesting about this movie, I think, is what Dreyer found interesting about Joan of Arc. He did, to his credit, spend about a year reading those documents and spending time where she spent time for that trial and just immersed himself in any recorded history there was of it before putting this film together,
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so I do think it's nice that you also have a lot of these, like she is finally coerced to sign the letter, and I do believe in actuality is presented as only momentary in the film. I believe they cut off her hair, they sweep it up, they kind of juxtapose that with the skull, and then in real life, I think that period of time was about 3 days. It showed that once they gave her some like water, she was able to be like, oh wait, no, let me just shake
Mm.
off this survival instinct real quick, and yeah, go ahead, burn me alive.
Earlier you brought up the set,
Hmm.
and we've kind of been touching on this also, that this movie was basically entirely lifted straight from transcripts of
Hmm.
this trial.
They even set it up in the narrative, like first and foremost. They show
Yeah.
a man with hands. I'm like, is Dreyer setting himself up as the narrator right now? Like literally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of.
it seems almost like a framing device, but in another way, it's like, let me show you how accurate I'm being with
Yeah.
all of this.
It kind of reminded me of Hexen a little bit, of that sort of like slightly like docudrama.
Docudrama and Catholic torture.
Right, that too. That
It
also
had
reminded
it
me
had
of
a lot
Hexen.
of similarities with
Yeah.
Hexen. Yeah.
I want to bring up a couple facts that were kind of moving beyond me having a good chance to say them, but I want to drop something real quick. It has to do with Dreyer and what he saw in the face of Falconetti, and I think it also probably it's fuel to his decision to the fire that is his decision that was to not allow anyone to have makeup because he initially saw her in Victor Margaretti's La Garçon, which is a French comedy. It's a play that he had gone to and he did not like it, did not like her, but for some reason went a second time. And his quote is that he felt there was something in her which could be brought out, something he could give, and therefore he could take. If he just, and now I'm paraphrasing, but if he were to just wipe off all the makeup and get behind the facade, apparently she was a very modern woman, modern actress. She wasn't as young as Joan of Arc. She was 35, I think, in the movie. From the moment he saw her, was like, yes, yes, that, but everything different.
Hmm.
And at some points, I almost felt uncomfortable watching it because she does most of the heavy lifting, and I do feel her pain, and I think it's because she was in pain, making the film. Apparently, there are several other anecdotes about
Hmm.
their tensions. Glenn, you had mentioned to me before we started recording, we were talking about how she'd only done a couple of films. I wonder if there was a kinship she might have felt to Joan of Arc, that might have drawn her to this. Did you do any reading or hear anything about how she might have wound up accepting the role?
No, I mean, yeah, I knew that she was a theater actor primarily, and that this is one of her only. I think there was one other film role that wasn't even very big or notable. Which I just kind of assumed that she was like, oh, I do theater, I don't do film. It's new and weird, and I don't like it. And I can't imagine this experience, changing her mind in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much her lack of film credits has to do with this movie specifically, or if it just didn't really interest her. But
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the stage thing because, like, the most notable thing about this movie is the subtle, small face acting, which is
mhm,
the opposite of what you do on stage. So
right,
Exactly.
she
Yeah.
definitely understood the assignment here.
The
yeah,
challenge.
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. She didn't feel outside of her medium at all. She understood the different elements at play that she had to tell a story, and
yeah.
she acted differently than I imagined she did prior.
I mean, not just that. I feel like this movie specifically gets held up as an example of like great film acting specifically, of like
Hmm.
what is it about cinematic acting that stands out from other forms, and like how it's like this I feel like is often held up as like one of the best film performances in history, which is like I kind of find it hard to argue with because it is like it's very straightforward. It's a lot of shots of her just thinking and sort of processing stuff, not speaking, and it's just that tight close up of her face for like like 70% of the movie. But it's like it like distills it down. One thing I think I like about a lot of silent movies that we've been watching is it like distills down some of these concepts to like very simple, pure forms of like this is what film acting is. It's like a close up of someone doing seemingly very little, but expressing so much with it.
And it allows, since film is such an allegorical medium, it allows you as the viewer to then put a lot onto their face yourself.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
That
for
makes
sure.
sense.
There's a good bit of Kuleshov going on in this.
Yeah. I think about the fact that none of the actors wore makeup is they shot this movie on a different type of film. They shot this on panchromatic film, which exposes a wider spectrum of light. It's like colors will show up more accurate. It's black and white film, but it captures more a wider spectrum.
Contrast was a big part of this undertaking as well.
Yeah,
Did you know the whole set was pink, pretty much?
yeah.
It's mainly just to distinguish the whites and the grays. They wanted such a white sky.
I think the reason they shot with panchromatic film was just to be able to expose the faces and all the detail therein,
Hmm.
which they wouldn't be able to do with orthochromatic film, which is most commonly used film up until that point. I think orthochromatic film was already kind of not being made by 1930.
Hmm.
They switched over pretty quickly because they're like, "Hey, this one's better."
Looks HD.
Look at what Carl did.
I'm curious what is it that kind of made you watch this movie the second time right after you watched it the first time?
Well, honestly, I was immediately moved to tears on my first viewing 3 times, maybe. I had sat down not really wanting to watch it because my attention span's not always great, and I was worried I'd be drifting, and I was just enraptured by it within 10 minutes. But since a lot of it is on what's going on with the actor, and since it doesn't preface with Joan of Arc's whole story, I was kind of like I wanted to see it again with the context of what put her there and with knowing what was going to happen so I could just kind of better read her emotions. And then my friend Krista was watching it right after I was watching it because we had tried to watch it together. She had fallen asleep and then afterwards had gone to watch it herself. I was like, I'm just going to sit down and watch this again. And I can't think of another movie that I willingly did that for. I did it for the 2010 Robin Hood, which was a terrible experience. That movie is awful, but I'm just kidding. It's a whole different story. But yeah, and I was so thrilled to see it a third time, honestly. I think I saw it with Voices of Light each time. Next time I'd like to try to see it with one of the other scores, but
Mm.
I'd like to take a point asterisk to talk about that some more, how this film was rediscovered and how Voices of Light came to even be cultivated for it. Do you know where they found this edit of the film?
Yeah. Well, I think we should, if we're talking about how this movie, like the history of this movie's kind of release and like the different versions of it, and it's like rediscovery, and I think we should start at the beginning, which was like this movie was came out in 1928, and it was almost immediately negative was lost in a fire, and so then Carl Theodor Dreyer was able to recreate the entire movie using alternate takes that weren't used the first time.
Sank into the swamp.
And there's even like there's some versions of the movie that have more wide shots in them,
Hmm.
which kind of shows like he shot wide shots that show the whole set, but he just didn't use them.
You missed the beat there. The second edit he did with the retakes also burned in fire not long
Well,
after he
yes,
did
no,
it.
I was getting to that. So yeah, he he recreated the entire movie with alternate takes. That also burned in a fire again almost immediately. But there were still copies sort of floating around that were screened, but they, those
Not
were
the original cut, though.
volatile, those were brittle. Some of those got lost. In the 50s, someone took the re-edited the sort of alternate take version and recut parts of it, put in a voiceover at the beginning, took out a lot of the intertitles and put subtitles in, cut off the side of the frame to add the soundtrack in, the optical soundtrack, which Dreyer hated. He thought it was terrible. There's a great quote from him where he says, "The editor, again with the best intentions, has tried to make the film more accessible to the general public by appealing to the public's bad taste."
He's got so many like that.
And yeah, fun guy. And then in the 60s, someone cobbled together a version with like using both different known versions of it. And that was for a while like the only version of it that existed. And then the original cut was rediscovered in 1981 inside a janitor's closet inside of a mental institution. And no one really knows how it got there, which is great.
One other thing I have here, which I'll leave it to you guys whether or not I go over it. I did kind of took some time to read this really lovely essay by Richard Einhorn on the Criterion copy I have. It was a
Mm-hmm.
written essay talking a little bit about how he came to put together and the orchestral piece that is Voices of Light. But I like this quote from Richard Einhorn, which is Joan of Arc, the illiterate teenage peasant girl who led an army, the transvestite witch who became a saint. Joan of Arc transgressed them all. It sets the stage for how different she is than everyone else,
Mm,
And it wasn't until 1920 that she was declared the saint that she is now.
right. Which is like 8 years before the movie came out. So that's like
Yeah, that's
a
new.
recent
Topical.
thing that Joan of Arc had been like canonized or whatever as a saint. Which I do think is kind of interesting context for this movie, where it's like, oh yeah, Joan of Arc just got her due. Like let's make the sort of like definitive Joan of Arc movie.
Yeah. Let's think about now that she's a saint, let's show why the choices she made were so powerful and valuable because she was essentially made into a martyr and she was okay with that.
Yeah, or at least the character in the movie is.
Or at least or if it happened as is portrayed to some extent, a lot of it could be mental illness, I mean, she could be a human who's like in a moment of clarity is like, yeah, I don't want to die, so I'll do the horrible thing. I'll do what you're forcing me to do so as to not die horribly. But then, the voices lift back up because that's what I mean. God lived in her head, according to her. That wasn't that part's for certain. I think a lot of the people who followed her probably followed her because they bought into that. And nowadays, I don't think she certainly wouldn't have walked at 17 years old up to well, maybe one of our presidents in recent history. But I was going to say most presidents in American history aren't going to give her an army. They're probably going to put her in a box. Ooh, was Joan of Arc in the asylum where they found the copy?
Ooh.
Oh,
I mean, it was
there you,
in Norway, so I don't think so.
you
But
could time travel to Norway. So she was 17 when she got that army. All told, by the time she was being burned alive, she was only 19.
yeah,
So she led a very short life, and I feel that while I'm watching this movie.
yeah,
I felt that actor felt connected to that death. Um, he did such a good job. I have it. There's nothing that could really be extrapolated out of this, but like 3 times in my notes in just big letters, it says her eyes.
yeah, yeah,
I feel like we'd be remiss not to at least mention that once.
yeah. The amount of expression that she's able to give through eyes, and then not in a sort of like overly kind of silent movie dramatic way, and just sort of like in a really kind of I hesitate to use the word soulful, but I feel like it applies here.
Yeah, it's
Oh, it definitely does.
quite nuanced and subtle acting for a
Yeah.
silent movie.
This movie does a lot of cool stuff with eye lines too, in terms of just like where people are looking and when. Because it's almost all close-ups. Like there's a lot of stuff of people looking between each other, I think even the repetition of that does kind of strengthen some of the just the points this movie's trying to make. Like, there's so much of the judges is kind of like giving each other these like kind of snide looks, and it's like their disrespect for her is so palpable without them saying anything. It's purely just through their body language and how they are looking at each other.
That guy who looks like one of the Koopa Bombs with the little
Yeah,
pointy
he's
hair,
got the little devil
two little
horn hair.
triangles. I've
Yeah.
got I might have a drawing. That doesn't matter.
I also noted the devil horn hair guy. But there's also there's the one guy that is sort of like trying to play kind of good cop in the interrogation, is trying to kind of convince
Not the
her
young
to
man, you know what I mean? You mean the older guy who's
the
like,
older
"Oh, it'll
guy,
all be
yeah.
over soon." Yeah.
Yeah. And where she keeps looking to him while they're asking her questions, and he's giving her a nod or a shake. And he's trying to get her to say what the court wants to hear.
Hmm.
But it's
I wonder
like
if he was supposed to be her like her lawyer essentially, you know, her representation.
medieval lawyer, maybe. But there's so much of just that thing of they're looking back at each other and through their eye line that is this movie gets eye lines really well. Like it does a lot with that. Just that one very simple 2 close-ups and a cut. This whole movie I feel like is a great example of like less is more. Of it's like it is kind of so minimalist in its visuals and its set design and all that stuff, and it's like the simplicity of all that I feel like really kind of creates a greater whole.
I would say it's simplistic until it's not. Some of the shots they did in this, I hadn't seen in anything that had been made earlier than this. Maybe you
Right.
guys could easily tell me I'm wrong, but there's one shot that they go to a couple times, which is the camera's kind of it's up above and it's upside down looking backwards, and then it kind of swings so it's facing down and moves at a 180-degree angle so it's looking forward.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Did I describe
Mm-hmm.
that okay?
I remember that exact shot you're talking about. I don't
Yeah, and they
know if
go to it once or twice later during the uprising.
I mean, I can't remember if we've seen that exact shot in anything before. I don't think this movie's necessarily doing anything that hasn't ever been done, but I think its entire kind of like visual style is something that feels very new and different for this time period. A lot of really low angles is something
Hmm.
that isn't super common.
Making them
I
feel
mean,
very much imposing of their will upon her for the whole
yeah,
movie.
they would dig holes in the ground or the floor of the
Yeah.
set and just like stick it down in a hole to get like these
Yeah.
super low angles.
Make them get even lower, yeah.
It feels very. I think the visuals of it do feel very ahead of its time, even if it's not
Hmm.
necessarily doing anything. There's nothing in it that's like that crazy, but it's like
What
it's
about the baby swing shots? There's a couple shots where the camera's kind of you're gonna have to cut to me to orchestrate this, but
oh yeah,
kind of moves in and
yeah,
out, but like at that same little like slow bop that a
right,
stroller
yeah,
would have. One that comes into mind is I don't this is the only part of the movie I didn't really get. But someone maybe it's a soldier who'd like turned coat, but someone's dropping like maces out a window. Yeah, and is swinging from hand in the window to hand on the ground, hand on the window to hand
yeah,
on the ground, and that was like the second or third time they did what felt like they set the camera on a fucking like one of the baby swings that sits
yeah.
in a doorway.
It
Yeah.
feels like that is part of like a greater movement that is kind of happening in the back half of the 20s of like
Lots of
the
inventive camera movement.
unchained camera. I think is
Yeah.
Yes.
whoever shot Last Laugh called it.
Or it looked like a camera dangling on chains, if anything.
Yeah, which it might have been. I mean, yeah, there was the cool swing shot in Wings. Murnau loves moving his camera around. There's the crazy crane shot in Wings.
I think what it is that the parts are not new, but the sum is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy definitely he didn't just know a lot of the tools that were available through the craft at the time, but he knew exactly how he could use that
Mm-hmm.
to emphasize certain emotional beats in his story. Though I say all this, we all watched it with Voices of Light, and I wonder how much that score is so wonderful. I wonder how much of the lifting in that kind of swell that you feel during the uprising is done by the music. Because I do think it played a big hand
Mm.
along with the editing and making me feel like rah rah at the end of this movie. What I don't know, but what about you guys?
There were probably a couple places where that score felt a little out of place to me, where
Hmm.
it was just a lot of like Latin chanting, and I was like, I don't know if I need this right now. That's more of a preference thing than anything, but yeah, I'm very curious to just see what this movie would be like with a different score. and how
Yeah.
much that would affect it. We haven't really done a lot of that of like watching. I think me and you, Chris, have watched different scores for certain movies, but it's like we've never done a real like compare and contrast type of thing.
Yeah, which might be good for a side thing to do. I was talking when
Yeah.
we watched the general about
We'll
how
watch this movie with 8 different scores.
I mean, I stitched together something like 8 different scores for A Trip to the Moon from multiple different releases onto the same video file so I could have it all in one thing and just pick the different channels, which was a way too involved of a process. But there are definitely times we've talked about where we're like, which on the general, for example, where I was listening to one soundtrack and I was like, I hate this actually. I had to switch over to the other one. That is one of the great things about silent movies in some ways, is that they are a canvas for different people's interpretations of them musically, and that can have a huge impact on the audience and how they end up feeling about a movie. So it is interesting to think about how the only canonical version of the movie is the visual one, but we can have our own kind of preferences of canonical score and all that kind of thing.
And thankfully, this movie is like famous enough and is well preserved enough that it's like we have that option too. That it's like it's been released with all these different scores that are all in good quality. There was such a long time watching movies from like the 1900s, 1910s where they were in like such terrible quality with like god awful music put over them that it's like now to watch stuff that's like been really well preserved and like is crisp and HD. It's like, oh, this is wonderful. This is movies.
I have heard that the original scores were very simple and not very much of their time, i.e., not great for this movie. And one Voices of Light is, I don't think was initially done to even be a score. I believe it was done just as kind of music inspired by the movie, which they later cut to the movie, which I find is kind of interesting. Is
sort
that
of
accurate?
a music from and
So.
inspired by album.
Yes,
like the
yeah,
Spider-Man
basically.
soundtrack.
Yeah, which might be why some of the chanting doesn't necessarily plug and play where they tried to make it,
Right.
because they are
It
it
wasn't
wasn't
intended
necessarily
as
for that.
a score per se, as much as just
Yeah,
representative of the movie or inspired by it.
and and I feel I should point out the performers. I believe on the version we heard, because this was from, I believe, a live performance in '95. It's a vocal group known as Anonymous Four on the DVD, but the soloist Susan Naruki part of it. Radio Netherlands Philharmonic and Choir are a part of it, and it was conducted by Stephen Mercurio. In case any of these people, since it happened in the '90s, come upon this episode, excellent work. I guess Einhorn discovered it in January of '88 while at the MoMA. He had seen it at a screening and was like, "This is awesome." And someone had approached him about potentially writing music
Mm-hmm.
to accompany it. And I believe he wrote it like pretty quickly, like within like a week. He was writing the music for that movie in '88, but it wasn't first presented until February of '94. The Northampton Arts Council, and it was the Arcadia Players, conducted by Margaret Irwin Brandon. And I think pretty much since then it's been seen as like this is what we go to, like more often than not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to highlight that because it does it adds a lot. It really does add a lot. I mean, go figure, sound and movies. I think there might be a version on my DVD release that is truly silent.
Yeah, you just press the mute button.
Basically.
Yeah, I mean, sound and movies. That's I guess it's not a huge theme of this episode because we're still watching all silent movies, but it is like a recurring. It's like we're in the moment now where it's like, yeah, we gotta kind of upend the entire business and the entire like art of it to a degree. It's pretty seismic shift.
It really is. Since there's so much of this is just close-ups. There's some visual imagery that really sticks out to me after seeing this. Like I can just mind's eye as I stare off into the distance. There's easily 20 shots that are like photographs in my head. So I
Yeah.
was curious if there was anything like that that stood out in this movie to either of you guys. See if any of them match what I have jotted down in front of me.
I mean, for sure, the opening shot, the like slow dolly shot across the sort of the sort of
The
crowd in
army
the
when it's going
courtroom.
left to right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a shot right at the end where as the sort of like uprising is happening and Joan is burning, and you kind of see her body like silhouetted in the flames.
Yeah.
That was very striking to me.
She went up. I feel like that must have been very graphic for the time as well, as just the interpretation of her death itself.
It's up there. Like, it's not. There's been some like somewhat graphic stuff, but this is definitely, in terms of like the visceral feeling this movie gives, is much stronger than most things that we've been watching. I mean, there's also the bloodletting scene. Well, that's just a real person's arm. It's not. It's not Falconetti's arm. It would think it was an extra that they. But they really.
Wait, that's a human arm?
It's
That's
a
not a
human
prop?
arm. No, that's a human arm with real
Jesus.
blood coming out.
That's not good.
Yeah, and it's yeah, it made me squirm like many horror movies do not, because it's like I don't want to. And yeah, the
I was
burning is
giggling.
also,
I have problems.
yeah, it's like it doesn't, like with the rest of the movie. It does a lot with a little, I think.
It does. It really does. What about you, Chris?
You know, this is kind of the reason why I had Glenn on this podcast in the beginning, and why it's useful to have you on the podcast in the beginning, is because as not a filmmaker, I feel like I have less of a good memory for shots, for individual shots. I just kind of like take it all in, unless it's something that's really making a point of itself. Though I did in my notes say lots of cool camera motion or faces moving in the frame. Love the close-ups, and the close-ups are so close that you can see her saying "we." But yeah, I mean, certainly that image toward the end. I mean, a lot of they do the same types of shots a lot, but a lot of those shots taken as individuals of her face and just the emotion and like the depth of color, quote unquote, in the shot, like that all was quite striking. And yeah, also like seeing her very clearly say yes at one point in French made me think about how it would be good to go to a lot of silent movies, or like have someone who knows how to lip read come to silent movies and see like what they might have actually been saying.
Yeah.
I'm always so curious about that, of how much this actual dialogue that they were speaking on set matches the intertitles or not.
Yeah.
Because I imagine a lot of time it doesn't. Because I think
like
a lot of the
dubbing an
time
anime.
they didn't even have written dialogue. They were just like, go talk.
Yeah.
And I'm so
be in
curious
character, yeah.
if they're just like saying bullshit or not, or like what they're talking about, like what the
Hey, gobbledy
dialogue
goobledy
is.
dabbedy doo. Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's that, but it's like I'm very, yeah, I don't know anyone, as far as I know, that can lip read, but that would be a fascinating thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna say, does anyone know what I mean when I say not once but twice did she find kinship with Belloc?
Oh, the fly.
Like twice. Once it lands on her eye, and she doesn't swat it until it's like crawling into her fucking eyeball.
Which
Sorry,
even that,
can we swear on this? No.
Yeah,
Told
we
you.
can.
We're the bad boys of silent film.
Yeah. The fly thing, I even wondered if that was intentional or not. I was like, was it just like, were there just flies on the set, or was that a thing where Carl Dreyer was like, and now flies?
Well, it did happen another time, and it felt more purposeful, which was right after the bloodletting. The old man comes in and says to her, he goes, "And the church always welcomes the misguided lamb." And then she tries to hold his hand, and he just kind of drops it, like, "Don't touch me." Slimy moment. But right after that, another fly landed on her.
Yeah.
So it stuck out to me.
I imagine it's probably a happy accident, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a happy accident in that the set was icky.
Yeah.
Or maybe they used the take that there wasn't a fly, and they're like, the fly one's the only one we got left now.
Well, no, the one that we watched is all the original first choice takes.
I thought it was the second choice.
Yeah. No, the second one burned up too, but they found in the institution the original cut somehow.
Yeah.
I thought
they
it was
have
the
no idea
second
where it
cut
came
they
from.
found.
No, the one in Norway was
No.
the original cut.
Gotcha.
With no censorship edits, no nothing. It was just like
Somehow, and in good shape too.
Yeah, it's like the perfect storm. It's just, no, this is exactly what we wanted to find.
So cool.
Every time I see a reel of random film, I wonder, like, is this something?
Is that
lost?
what it is? Right.
Yeah.
It's like, is this the Murnau Jekyll and Hyde movie?
The day before yesterday, I just went to I just drove 3.5 hours each direction to go and pick up about 50 film prints from the basement of the previous tech director of the Telluride Film Festival.
Oh, cool.
He was donating them, and he had like 50 or so movies plus a bunch of just like random reels of stuff and short cartoons and everything like that. It was a very long day of loading thousands of pounds of film into
Oof.
trucks. But you always wonder if like in one of those basements, like you're gonna find something that no one has ever seen before.
Because that's
Event
always the
Horizon Director's
story.
Cut. Event Horizon Director's Cut. No, I'm
That
sorry. I'm a
right,
nerd.
the story isn't like, oh, we found this in like a lab somewhere. It's always like, oh no, this was under
So and
someone's
so's
floor.
closet, yard
Yeah.
sale,
Yeah.
kind of
This was
stuff.
like
Yeah.
inside a toilet somewhere, and then it's like, and
The
now
back of the
it's we
toilet. Yeah.
restored it. So yeah, everyone check your toilets. There might be some old silent movie prints in there.
A couple moments I want to point out. I'm almost, believe it or not, got through all these notes. I have problems, but
No, it's
I went
You are
great.
ham.
you're showing us up right now
You're
because
so much more prepared than we ever are. So this is great.
You still have to edit through my babble, so
It's
you're
all
doing great.
going in.
There's a lot of spitting. I wanted to point out the spitting. They spit on her all the time. The bug, before I get away from the fly, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's intentional because we got two fly beats. The third beat is a maggot in the eye socket of the skull when they dig up the bones, and that's the beat that makes her for momentarily cave. And she's been having the fly land in her eye, land in her eye, land in her eye, and then to see that and imagine that as her, the fly birthing off of her death, she couldn't take it
The
for a
maggot in the
moment.
eye socket. I mean,
wow.
if that's intentional, that's brilliant. If it's unintentional, it's somehow even more brilliant. But that's the thing. It might not. That might have been something he found in the edit. You know what I mean?
No, it
Like,
might be, but if it's in the edit, who
yeah,
cares? It's put.
right.
I think it's in,
It's in the movie.
regardless of whether it happened pre, post, or in
Yeah.
production. That was a decision, and I think it was a brilliant one. And those kind of details, I wouldn't have caught that if I didn't have notes on the third watch.
Mm,
So that's one of the reasons I want to keep going back to this movie. There's always ways to tie these shots together. This movie is structured very beautifully in threes in a lot of spots. Like
mm,
very very much foreshadowed imagery. I also think it was intentional that the moment that made her snap back to reality is not just her crown on the ground, but it's her hair being swept up after it's shaved from her head. The hair is dead, but it grows back in its place. You know what I mean? And
mm,
that imagery in juxtaposition to all the bones, a much more beautiful side of human decomposition, I think, made it easier for her to no, no, I know what I have to do. So that was another image of just sweeping with the triangle they used as like a dustpan.
mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that was a very nice shot as well, even if it was less. It's less going on. It's literally hair getting swept off the ground, but felt like it meant so much. I didn't feel like there was a wasted cutaway. They did a lot also to emphasize her point of view throughout the movie. You had the first example of the baby swing shot was on the main judge, and it was kind of going in and out of his face.
Yeah.
And it was kind of while she was starting to, you can imagine, feel nauseous, getting that circle of repetitive questions around her, as they're just trying to get her to talk herself into guilt. And then there's a few others. There's the camera moving into the guy spying through the keyhole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you remember this? That stands out in my mind. The spinning point of view, when all the judges are in the room with her and she realizes she can't get a final sacrament, and she decides that I'm not sent from Satan, you're sent from Satan. That's another example. And the most common one, I think, is you have a lot of examples of framing with the head in the lower third of the frame, with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of extra head space behind them that's either showing maybe a cross on the wall or what have you. And to me, it expressed a sort of almost dissociation that she was feeling, whereas she couldn't meet these people in their eyes. Or maybe she was lost by the grandeur of the situation. Even down there, looking up and giving them all that emphasis, she was looking kind of past them. They did a lot of point of view in this that I can't remember seeing in other earlier movies I'd seen. So I guess that's another question I wanted to ask you guys is how common was point of view at this point in feature film, and were a lot of these kind of like movements that were meant to express feeling rather than actual vision? Was that kind of seen as avant-garde at the time? Is
It
that
probably
outside of the reg?
it probably was seen as avant-garde somewhat, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's uncommon. I think especially in. I think the American movies are probably a little bit more simplistic. I don't want to put them down because there's been a lot of really good American stuff in the last few years of movies. But yeah, I don't think any of those things are new ideas, but they're being used really effectively here. I
They
mean, I
absolutely
almost
are.
feel like the very idea of a close up started as a POV shot, and it was like a whole gimmick that they'd build a whole movie around. Like there were all of the looking
Yeah.
through keyhole movies. There were all the like what is seen in the telescope movies, and it's like, ooh, look over here, it's a dog. Look over here, it's a baby. Wonderful.
And there's a lot of brilliant intercutting. That's the last big thought I have as far as
Yeah.
the cinematography is concerned. Where she's giving her last sacrament, and she's with that young priest who kind of, as the movie goes, it seems starts to feel bad for her.
Mm-hmm.
It's intercut with these awesome overheads of the military, people prepping the execution, all the religious imagery of the sacrament, the cross. You have all these young boys lining up, ready to take the place of these judges when they come of age, and all of that's intercut with a man playing around on stilts, and I love that. What a commentary on all the like practice of religion. It's all just
Yeah.
this big
We need to cut to
distraction.
a carnival for parts of it. Yeah.
There were some contortionists and stuff. At one point, he's like, "I just want to film this
Yeah.
carnival for 3 minutes. Is that okay?
Big year for carnivals.
Yeah.
1928.
Is that true? Why do you say that?"
Well, because I mean, the other movies that we talked about in this episode, the circus, the
Man Who
the,
Laughs.
Man Who Laughs is a lot of carnival stuff. Is there another one?
I think there is.
I just got here, so.
I feel like there was some more carnival stuff, but yeah, that was like a weird. Just for some reason, all the movies that we chose to watch for this year have a lot of carnival stuff in them.
Carnivals are fun. We all like carnivals. And then I want to end it on her burning. Just the final thoughts of that.
Mm.
So painful, and I'm glad they opted to show it as much as they did. The imagery with her looking up towards the cross, the birds, the cross getting ripped from her arms, everything about that. It was hard not to cry the third time I watched it.
Mm.
It moved me. I wish I was able to come here with more poignant allegory regarding that imagery at the end. I don't have it, but it was something. And everything about what she was going through, you can attach so many themes of struggle, particularly with people in weak positions, to this character. It's a rare example of a film from this time that I would recommend to nearly everybody,
Mm.
even if I might preface that you might not like it because of what it is. I think it'll surprise most people, and I especially think it's a strong film for a young person who is a woman or who is bullied, picked on, a person, an LGBTQ person. You might find a lot of support and kinship with someone like Joan of Arc as she's interpreted in this film. Again, it reminded me of Last Temptation of Christ, wherein a lot of Christians were afraid that Jesus's doubt and fears in that movie would somehow detract from the image of him as their savior, when really those kind of things, I think, they help feed the humanity in these people, these characters, however you want to view it, that allows for generations and generations to connect and relate. Really refreshing to see a character like that treated like this, and even more refreshing to see it happening the time in which it was happening, even if it did come from a man who may have been kind of toxic. I don't know, I wasn't there, seems so. But just wanted to say also her name one more time, Renee Jean Falconetti, or Maria Falconetti, or as she's credited as I think just Mel Falconetti.
Mademoiselle Falconetti.
What a masterpiece, man. What a master class of acting. Get out while the getting's good. Maybe like there's no topping that performance. Maybe that's why she didn't go back to movies, because
Right.
they're gonna talk about this in
I
100 years.
I
Yeah,
did it,
I win
guys.
movies.
I did the best performance. I can just hang it up now.
I won the movies.
Yeah.
I won the movies.
I don't know if we're gonna find a better spot to go out on than that.
I do have one question. Rudolph Matte, who was the cinematographer, he went on to shoot tons and tons of films, and directed even more. And I wasn't sure if you guys were familiar.
No.
Nope.
Tons of people that we have come up, like, been exposed to doing the show that later learn like, oh, they were incredibly important and like did all this stuff. The guy who I'm completely blanking on his name, shame on me. The cinematographer for Last Laugh also shot the pilot for I Love Lucy, and is therefore kind of responsible for like cinematic language, like developing
sitcom
cinematic language
language.
in the 20s and like what movies look like, and then
Wow.
went to television and basically set the standard for
Developed the
what
sitcom.
television looks
Yeah.
like. Also,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Wow, that's nuts. What's his name?
I forget.
Oh, well, we gotta
We'll
figure that one
we'll
out.
splice it in using a computer voice.
Right. This is also just for the little beats. Film written by Joseph Deltel, who wrote it with Carl T. H. Dreyer, and it was edited by Marguerite Bow. And a hell of a job by Marguerite.
Great
I'm imagining
editing
that's the
in this
original
thing.
original
Yeah.
editor. I don't know how much editing goes into a restoration process of a film like this. I imagine not much.
I think if they can get away with it, none.
Yeah,
I think
that's what you'd hope.
they really try to preserve as much of the original editing as possible. Carl Freund is his name.
Oh, the man who what do you call it?
The man who invented movie language. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't, but he's definitely an important.
Oh, wow,
figure
he
in
did the
history.
Golem too.
Yeah. See what I mean? Like you look into what he's worked on, and it's like, oh my god, he did everything. I'm so glad they were able to have someone as passionate about this movie talk about it on
The
the show,
Passion of
because
Cody
that's, like,
Jackson.
exactly. That'll be the name of this episode.
Well, thanks everybody for listening, and thank you again, Cody, for joining us on this episode. It was really great to hear what you had to say about what's this movie, Joan of Arc.
Passion of Joan of
The
Arc.
Passion of Joan
Thank
of
you
Arc.
seriously for having me. Thank you so much. This was my first podcast, if you didn't know. And everyone, keep an eye out for the movie Mole. It's coming anytime now.
Yes.
Oh.
Glenn gets that.
And again, you completely made us look like fools on your first podcast appearance and our like 35th.
My notes are always just dumb jokes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you ever have me again, I can be a little bit more cohesive in my order of my babble. But it meant a lot that you guys gave me the time of day, so thank you.
Yeah, of course.